If you have been unlucky enough to suffer a crash, it's good practice to give your bike a safety check to make sure it's safe to continue on using. So in this Monday maintenance video, that is exactly what we're gonna do. There's no special tools required for this. The only thing you're gonna need is a hard plastic item, such as a tyre lever, and a soft microfiber cloth so that we can check the frame over, clean anything, and it also is going to help us see if there's any damage to the paint. Now, going through and doing a safety check on your bike is mostly about being methodical, taking your time, visually assessing everything to see if there's any damage, and then investigating whether it's just cosmetic or if it's structural and functional. So the first area we should start at is the frame and the forks. Checking over the frame and fork is all about being methodical and taking your time to work over the entire frame and look at all of the little gaps, which are actually quite hard to see. It's also where your soft microfiber cloth comes in handy. Not only can you use it to clean off any dirt and make sure you can see the paintwork and the frame correctly, it also means as you are wiping the cloth gently over the frame, if there's any damage to the paint or sort of cracks, the cloth will sometimes snag on it, and it's a good indicator where you need to look closely. Now, all you're going to do is start at the front, work your way round, follow all of the different tubes, look at the different areas, wipe the cloth over, and also it's a good idea to think about how you did crash your bike to see if there's certain areas that you need to focus on, maybe a certain side or whether the front or the back has taken the brunt of the impact. Now, the way that I crashed did involve another bike, which also left a little scuff mark on my head tube here. So what I can do is wipe that over and see that thankfully, I've got a little protective sticker on the front here, and that's taken most of the impact. So I can peel that off and make sure that underneath the paintwork is okay. If you do find any damage to the paintwork, you need to try to assess it to make sure you can decide whether it's purely cosmetic and is only the paint that's damaged, or whether there's something a bit more sinister hidden underneath the paint. Now, on a carbon fiber bike, you can go around tapping sections of the frame with your hard plastic item or tyre lever to see if there's any change in the noise that you get. So if you tap it across here, and all of a sudden as you go across the area that looks damaged, there's a dull sound or the sound changes significantly, that's an indicator that you need to investigate this further and probably should get some professional advice on this. If your bike is made from a metal, so it could be steel or alloy, chances are any major impact is going to have dented the tube, and that's going to be pretty clear to see as well. All good to me. The reason I'm checking the top tube is because when I crashed, the handlebars swung all the way round, so it's good practice to check these areas because this section of the frame can be quite vulnerable. Okay, having checked over the frame and decided that you're happy that nothing is damaged, then the next thing we're going to do is move to the front of the bike and start our checks of all of the different components, working our way backwards to make sure everything works as it should and nothing else is damaged. So when we come to the front of the bike, the first sort of thing we want to check is the front wheel. We can lift the bike up, spin the wheel round, check that it's not buckled. We can also check that the brake isn't rubbing. At the same time, if you've got disc brakes, we can check that the disc rotor isn't bent. Stop the wheel. We can work our way around with our hands, checking and feeling all of the spokes to make sure we haven't got a broken spoke, or maybe one of the spokes could be bent and damaged. If it is, then it would need replacing. Having checked the wheel, we can check for side-to-side play as well. Then if we move up to the handlebars, this is an area I think you need to pay particular interest to, because if you have crashed, chances are your bike's going to fall onto one side or the other. You could have damage to either the handlebars or the shifters themselves. The easiest indicator to see how severe the damage is that the bar tape would be ripped. In this instance, it's not, so that's good because it means the impact applied to the handlebars was relatively low. You can also check the shifters, so you want to check both sides. If you move to the front of the bike, you can visually assess whether they've been knocked and tilted inwards. These still look to be in good shape in the position I have them set at. You can work your way down the sides of the lever blades looking for damage. Again, it's going to be pretty obvious. Most of the time with shifters, the damage that they're going to sort of attain tends to be pretty sort of cosmetic and isn't going to have any significant impact onto the function of them. It's just an incredibly annoying thing. As I spoke around earlier, if the handlebars have turned and hit the top tube, you might have some damage on the frame, but also worth checking the handlebars. If you've got a carbon fibre handlebar, it's good to check it thoroughly. So it might just be good practice to take your handlebar tape off and look through to make sure there isn't any damage to the carbon fibre. That said, if the tape is okay, chances are the handlebar underneath is going to be okay. Oh, one more check that you could perform on the front of your bike, and that is to check the headset that it isn't loose and hasn't developed any free play. To do so, apply the front brake and then gently rock the bike forwards and backwards, and here you're trying to feel and listen if there's any knocking noises coming from the top headset bearing or the lower headset bearing. You can also take your spare hand and just hold the bike on those areas as you gently rock it forwards and backwards. Thankfully, it's good to go. If we continue to move back onto the bike, we come to the center where we've got the cranks and the seat post and the saddle. If we start at the top of the middle of the bike and then work our way down, that makes most sense. So for the saddle, what we're trying to do is again decide which side your bike fell. Here I can see that the bike has fallen to the left-hand side, so we've got a nice little scuff. And whilst most of this just looks cosmetic, it's important to check underneath of the saddle to make sure that the base hasn't got any cracks in. This saddle's got carbon fibre rails, so if they've received an impact significant enough, the rails will just break. If, however, you've got a saddle that uses metal rails, they can in some instances bend, and to assess whether the saddle is bent, you're going to want to move to the back of the bike, hold it up straight, make sure that the saddle is in line and not drooping or raised on one side. So I've also taken off the saddle bag to help make checking the rest of the saddle pretty easy. Other than one little scuff on the side, all good so far. So then if we move down to the center of the bike, we've got the cranks, the chain rings and the pedals. Now, being the most outboard item on the bike, the pedals are one of the first items that is going to hit the floor. Now, as I've already said, this bike has pretty much fallen to the left, so we're mostly going to look at the left pedal. And we can see, like the saddle, it's just got one small little scuff on the outside. So that's good. Because the damage is small, it means the force that has been sustained to the side of the bike is also nice and low. And do you know what? It's so small, I don't think I'm even going to worry about it, and 90% of people wouldn't even notice it. You can check the crank arms as well to make sure there's no damage there. Repeat the same process for both sides, looking at the edge of the pedal, look at the crank arms, and as we spin the cranks backwards, we can make sure that the chain rings aren't bent as well. All looks good to me. Okay, so pedals, cranks, chain rings, bottom bracket, good to go. Onto the back of the bike. Now, there's quite a few different areas at the back that we need to be checking. We can check the back wheel, so repeat the same process of what we've done at the front. Spin it, check the rotor, check that it's not buckled, check all the spokes, check for free play side to side. That is all going to be pretty good to go. I'll do that in a second. But also, the more important part is we've got the gears and the derailleur, an area of the bike which is sensitive to even knocks and bangs, let alone a crash. So the most important thing to do is, like we've done with the rest of the bike, visually assess the derailleur to make sure there's no scuffs and damage on it. That's a clear indicator that it's been hit. And then if we move around to the back of the bike, we can look straight down and see if the derailleur hanger has bent, and that means that the cage of the derailleur is not sitting in line with the bike, and the chain is going to make shifting all pretty bad. Thankfully though, bikes are designed with replaceable derailleur hangers, so if that is the case, you can just buy a new replacement hanger and line everything up perfectly. Having just spoken about the derailleur hanger and said how it's a replaceable part, if you do notice it's just ever so slightly bent, well, thankfully there's a tool to help you sort that out, and it's called the DAG-3 from Park Tools. There's also other versions available. Essentially what this does is you remove the derailleur from the derailleur hanger, you thread this little part here onto the side, and then it allows you to carefully bend and measure and position the derailleur perpendicular to the rear axle. Oh, that's a good word, that. You've got a little gauge here, so you rotate it round, and we've actually made a video showing exactly how to use this. So if that's something that you've noticed that is a problem on your bike, well, you can either get a tool like this to straighten it out, or head to your local bike shop, because I can almost guarantee they'll have something the same. Okay, so that's got us to the back of the bike, but there are a couple of other little checks which we should do. First one that I forgot to mention, bottle cages. Give them a little check over. If you've got some super lightweight carbon fibre cages like I do, they sometimes can be susceptible to damage in a crash. So check they're not broken, all good there. Same with the front one, good to go. And then if you've got a work stand, it's good practice to pop the bike up into stand and you can run through the gears to make sure that everything's functioning correctly. This could also be an indicator of highlighting if the derailleur is bent or damaged as well. That's going to mean that the bike is good to go. And then the most important part of this whole check is to make sure that the brakes function correctly. So pull the levers, make sure they're applying the brake correctly and that the travel of the lever doesn't go too far back. And that's going to mean your bike is good to stop. So there you go, that is how to perform a basic safety check on your bike. Let me know in the comments section down below if you perform this kind of safety check. And also let me know how bad the last crash was that you had, because mine, I'm going to rate it a 7 out of 10. Anyway, if you want to see more interesting maintenance related videos, subscribe to GCNTech and turn on your notifications. Right, I'm out of here to go and sulk about my crash. Love you, bye.
You're going to do a notification dance?
Notification dance.
I've been trying to do them with all the presenters.
Notification dance. I've only got one arm free, so yeah, that's the dance.
I'm only joking. That's the first notification dance.
Kill me now.